The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines sovereignty as supreme power, especially over a body politic. It also is defined as freedom from external control or as a controlling influence. In international law, a sovereign state is an entity with one centralized government with the authority over a permanent population within a defined territory that is capable of entering relations with other sovereign states. Generally, a sovereign state is neither dependent on another state, nor does it subject its influence over another. The very process of making treaties with states and engaging in diplomatic relations is a declaration of each state's recognition of the other's sovereign statehood. In the United States, tribal nations are considered sovereign. This means the United States acknowledges tribes have the authority to govern themselves within its geopolitical boundaries. The U.S. recognized tribes 3 times within its Constitution, perhaps the most important of which was the Commerce Clause. In Article 1, Section 8, the Constitution states that Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, and with the Indian tribes. This clause therefore establishes tribal nations as sovereign governments separate from the United States. That is why the United States engaged in treaty-making with tribal nations, an act that acknowledges their sovereignty. Various decisions made in federal courts have influenced the way sovereignty is interpreted in federal Indian law. The most classic example of cases which have forever altered the legal interpretation of tribal sovereignty is known as the Marshall Trilogy. These 3 Supreme Court decisions in the early 1800s upheld the legal and political standing of indigenous nations in the United States. However, they also set a limiting precedent for self-rule within the definition of sovereignty. Johnson v. McIntosh in 1823 found private citizens could not purchase lands from Native Americans, distinguishing tribal lands as separate and distinct. Cherokee Nation v. Georgia in 1831 upheld the Cherokee Nation's independence from the United States only insofar as to be like a ward to its guardian. This distinction established tribes as domestic dependent nations. In other words, sovereign nations that had indigenous rights that U.S. states do not have, but which are still subjected to the ultimate authority of the federal government in many ways. Finally, Worcester v. Georgia in 1832 elaborated on the relationship between tribes, states, and the federal government. This case prevented states from playing a role in Indian affairs, giving the federal government the sole authority to negotiate with Indian nations, much like it deals with other foreign nations. We will dedicate a later video to the Marshall Trilogy. For now, it is important to understand what sovereignty is meant to be, and that, when applied to tribes, its definition has shifted over the years to accommodate federal interpretation and interests. Throughout the year, we will discuss everything from treaty obligations to contemporary jurisdiction disputes, and how all these issues tie back to the concept of sovereignty. Today we have 2 videos for you, so be sure to check out the second video, Tribal Independence, Pre-Columbus to 1787. As always, be sure to subscribe, provide feedback or requests, and share this channel so we can all be on the same page.